Hi everyone, this is John chapter 4. In this chapter, here are some of the highlights. Jesus goes to Galilee. This is a picture of Galilee. And we're going to see Jesus come from where he left off in chapter 3, where Jesus is staying in Ephraim. And we're going to travel into and through Samaria, where we're going to meet the woman at the well. Then we're going to come up to Galilee. And this is where Jesus will be. Back in the day, during Jesus' time, the Jews would actually avoid this area of Samaria. That rhymes. Anyway, they would avoid it because the Samaritans, they sold out the rest of the Jewish people to occupying forces, particularly the Romans. And so they were ostracized from the rest of the Jewish population. And so the Jews on the way to and from Galilee and Judea, especially Jerusalem, kind of traveling up and down this entire Canaanite region, they would actually purposely go up and around Samaria to Galilee. And the Jordan River would supply them with enough resources where they could do this trek versus just taking the shorter route right into Samaria, through it, and into Galilee. So as we read, Jesus, once he began attracting more followers than John, he leaves Judea. He left Judea and went away again into Galilee. And he has to pass through Samaria. So here is the gospel writer telling you he's going from Judea in the south to Galilee in the north. And he has to pass through Samaria. He has to pass through this area. So already we know that Jesus is blazing his own trail because the Jews didn't pass through Samaria. And so that's a significant point right there. Jesus does what he wants, and we'll see why he does that. So he comes to a city called Sychar, and where Jacob gave to his son Joseph a well. There's a well there in Sychar. And so if I can pull up that map again, we'll see where exactly Jesus is. Here's Ephraim. He comes up, sure enough, Sychar. There we go. Jacob's well and Sychar are right there. So what happens here? Jesus meets the woman at the well. She is the famous character in John chapter 4, where there came a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." And what's important about this is that it's during the middle of the day when this is happening. The verse before, verse 6, John notes it was about the 6th hour. So the 6th hour, we're actually high noon right now. It's noon time. You don't go draw water at noon. You draw water very early on in the morning or at night when the sun's not out. Wells were not in the middle of town. Wells were in the outskirts of town. So you had to carry that water with you quite a distance with all this water that you're balancing. And you didn't want to do that during the day because, one, the water is heavy, and so it's going to tire you out. You're gonna sweat. It's going to be exhausting. The sun is beating down on you. And 2, the water will evaporate. You're going to have less water from the well down the hill and back up to the city. By the time you get home, you're going to have lost a lot of water and you will have spent a lot of energy. So people would draw water in the beginning of the day before the sun was out, or at the very end of the day when the sun was setting. So the fact that this woman is coming to the well to draw water is fishy, given that it's high noon right now. Something else about wells, if you notice on our map, the well is right in the middle of the road. So that's also on purpose because if you were, let's say, not gathering water for your house for the day, let's say you're a traveler. Well, you need to water give your horse water, and you yourself need to drink. So how are you going to do that? Well, you put the road where the well is. The well comes first, and so then you just build the road around the water source. So what's really happening here is the woman at the well, she's not actually here to draw water. She's here to find another husband. We know this because in verse 15, let's see, Jesus says, verse 16, "Go, call your husband and come here." Well, Jesus knows that she doesn't have just a husband, because the woman answers and says, "I have no husband." To which Jesus says, "You're right. You have had 5 husbands." So Jesus knows already that when he says, "Bring your husband over here," he knows that she's going to say, "Well, actually, I don't have a husband." And actually, that's not even true. She does have a husband. She's on her 6th husband. She's looking for her 6th husband right now, drawing water at the well. So we now know her game. She's had 5 husbands already, and she's coming to the well where male travelers come through to find a 6th husband. So this meeting with Jesus, with the woman at the well, is a meeting that has a little bit of electricity to it. Jesus is speaking to a woman who's looking to flirt with men, who's looking to have men, be infatuated or fall in love with her. And so Jesus, of all the people that Jesus evangelizes, I particularly love this story because this is a very unique type of evangelism that Jesus has to play the game. He has to know how to speak to a woman who all she's looking for is another suitor, another lover. And so here are some pictures of that encounter that I think capture that dynamic, that energy in the room, that electricity between Jesus and this woman. Here are some pictures I think capture that really well. Here's an image of Jesus casually sitting at the well. Here's the well over here. This is a very kind of Greco type of sculpture that this artist had a rendition of painting. And so Jesus is kind of sitting at the well, kind of, "Oh, draw me some water." So he's very, very approachable. She's kind of leaning over into his personal space. So Jesus has to dance this game with her, knowing that she's looking for a man to give her a unique kind of attention. So I just love how much Jesus actually loves her, because this is not what Jesus is here for. Jesus is here to bring her home, to make her fall in love with all the people that she's fallen in love with. He wants her to fall in love with God. And so Jesus has to enter into her world of seduction to speak a language that she's used to. And I just think that shows so much about God's love, about Jesus' love for her and for us, that he's willing to speak any language that we're familiar with, even if it's one of seducing the men that are passing through the well. Here's another image of that, where the woman at the well is clearly dressed up in a way that someone coming to the well wouldn't normally be wearing certain things. She has all this jewelry on. She has her headdress. She really the jug here is kind of an afterthought, really. Look how much preparation went into how she looks. And Jesus, on the other hand, is sitting very he's pulled back. He's not bearing down on her. This is clearly not how Jesus is speaking to the woman at the well right now. He's not speaking with all the force and the conviction that really we kind of think Jesus usually speaks with. Jesus here in this painting is very reserved. He's giving her all the ground to make her advances, to show her display why she's there. She's the one standing. Jesus is the one who's sitting. So you can kind of see there. She's standing. Jesus is the one sitting. The floor is all hers. Jesus isn't pushing anything on her. And so Jesus has to be the passive one in this situation. Here's another one where the woman at the well is standing. And Jesus is sitting very casually, letting her approach him. And we know why she's approaching him. She's looking for her sixth husband. But Jesus lets her approach him, all so that Jesus can then point her back to God, to have that loving relationship, which is truly what she's seeking. Again, here's another very charged painting during the Renaissance period, where the woman is clearly dressed for enticing a man. Jesus very leaning back, letting her be the aggressor. And so again, I think it just highlights Jesus's willingness to let us come to him on his terms. And I think that also we can come to the well, whatever her well was literal water, and whatever your well is. We come to God with certain things that we ask for, and we leave with so much more if we let God speak to our hearts. And that's what ends up happening with the woman at the well. So to continue with the chapter very quickly, Jesus then encounters a man who has a sick son. His son is dying. And so Jesus says, he says, "Go, your son lives." Very simply. Jesus says, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe." But the royal official says to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." And Jesus just, "Go, he's alive." And this is the reunion of the royal official and his son, where verse 54 in this chapter says this was Jesus' second sign that he performed. The first sign being the wedding at Cana, where he turned water into wine. And now we have our second sign, the second miracle, where Jesus heals the nobleman's son with just a word, "Go, your son lives."